Hey guys, before we get started today, I need to apologize for something. In the video you're about to see, I refer to this ability as Plasma. That's what I wrote in the script, and it's what I call it throughout the entire video. It's actually called Spark. This is Spark Kirby. I didn't realize that until I was halfway through editing, and I don't feel like re-recording those lines. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to get this off my chest. I am truly, deeply sorry. Anyways, enjoy the video. I don't know if I can call myself a Kirby fan. Okay, wait, hold on, let me explain please. I like Kirby. I really like Kirby. He's adorable, his lore is incomprehensible, and they made Meta Knight Spanish, that's cool. Me and Kirby, we go way back. I remember catching Kirby Right Back At Ya on 4Kids and watching that religiously growing up. I'm pretty sure I didn't even know he was a video game character. I just liked it whenever DDD spoke. It was this, Sonic X, and Pokemon. Nothing else mattered. What the hell is Pot of Greed? I've enjoyed every Kirby title I've played. All three of them. I've played through most of Kirby Superstar Ultra, 100%ed Kirby's Return to Dreamland, and I've played the ability challenges in the Kirby Dream Collection. I played the first few levels of Amazing Mirror and Nightmare in Dreamland 2. I also boot up Super Kirby Clash once a year, if that counts. That's it! I have barely touched this franchise, and I know way too much about it in spite of that fact. I have made 2 whole videos talking about this foul creature. 3 actually, but I don't know if that counts. So, now that you know that I am a fake fan, you may now be asking one question. What authority do I have to even talk about these games? How can I discuss the franchise in any meaningful way when I myself have only experienced a fraction of what it has to offer? And genuinely, that is a valid question. Kirby Squeak Squad is the second Kirby game released on the Nintendo DS. It's also called Kirby Mouse Attack in Europe. Europe is bad at naming things. Released in 2006, it is widely considered one of the video games of all time. This game released to not much fanfare and was quickly overshadowed by its much cooler younger brother on the system, Kirby Superstar Ultra. Squeak Squad was developed by HAL Laboratories and Flagship, who are probably most well known for their work on the Zelda series, and also a lot of Resident Evil. I mean, I see the vision. This was also the last game Flagship worked on before being merged with the rest of Capcom in 2007. Possibly more importantly, this was the first Kirby game released after Kirby's creator, Masahiro Sakurai, left the company to go work on Smash games till the end of time. Kirby Squeak Squad is overall in a bit of an interesting position in terms of development. It also has the unfortunate position of being the least interesting Kirby game on the DS. While Squeak Squad did come first, many people point to Superstar Ultra as the DS's definitive Kirby game. And when you describe both titles to someone, I mean, what sounds more interesting to you? A game that's a series of various miniature adventures, each of which explore a unique scenario or a change in gameplay, and this game happens to be a remake of what's considered one of the best games in the franchise, which adds its own additional adventures and side modes? Or would you rather play the Kirby game where the beam ability sucks? Beyond that, the system also has 2 spin-off titles, Kirby Canvas Curse and Kirby Mass Attack. Are these games good? I don't know, I never played them. Also, I don't know if I can call them spin-offs since I'm pretty sure they are canon, but let's not worry about that. Canvas Curse did get a successor on the Wii U, and Mass Attack has Escargoon, so there you go. Even if these games are bad, you can't deny that they certainly tried something new. And I think that's people's biggest problem with Squeak Squad. This is the safest Kirby game in existence. Because this was the first mainline entry to not have the series' main creator involved, I think HAL was a bit unsure of where to take the series next. So, as to avoid potentially alienating any fans of the series, Squeak Squad takes the opposite of risks. This is the new Super Mario Bros. Of Kirby. So, with all of that said, why did I choose this game to talk about today? Out of all of the entries in the Kirby series, why did I decide to shine a light on this title specifically? That is another good question. I don't know. Why not start off with the area where I think Kirby is at its best? The lore. Or more specifically, the story. The plot reads as follows. One day, Kirby is out enjoying a nice day, about to eat his strawberry shortcake, when suddenly it's stolen right in front of his eyes. Assuming this is another trick by that bastard King Dedede, Kirby runs off to go kick his ass. Yep, that's the opening premise. This reads like a parody. Things are not quite what they seem though, for once Dedede's ass is thoroughly kicked, the real villains of this story show themselves. DeRoach and the titular Squeak Squad, a band of thieves that goes around and steals whatever. Just ignore the fact that they already showed up in a previous level, nope, this is their introduction. Assuming his shortcake is amongst the treasures they've stolen, Kirby goes to the ends of the earth to hunt them down. The story then takes a major backseat for the next 5 worlds. We fight a few members of the Squeaks like this mech thing. They also build their own version of Krakow and no one seems to talk about it. And there's also this random bird and mole that fights you. I don't think they're affiliated in any way, these guys are just hanging out. It's not until level 6 where things finally pick back up. Kirby finally faces off against DeRoach. But before Kirby can grab his treasure chest, Meta Knight swoops in out of nowhere to steal the box and runs off. Kirby chases after Meta Knight, and ends up following him inside the Halberd, still shipwrecked after the events of Superstar. This is a very pleasant surprise. I'm so used to Nintendo games barely acknowledging their own lore, that seeing continuity like this makes me leap out of my chair celebrating. The game doesn't stop there though. During the fight, Meta Knight gets the Halberd up and running again, and goes to fucking space, thus explaining how it comes back in later entries. After a very honorable duel against Meta Knight, DeRoach comes back to steal the treasure box and opens it. It turns out that inside this chest wasn't Kirby's delectable shortcake, but the spirit of Dark Nebula. Who's Dark Nebula? Don't interrupt me. Dark Nebula possesses DeRoach and escapes out into Gamble Galaxy, the greatest name for a world of all time. Kirby chases after DeRoach and eventually beats him up a second time, separating him from Dark Nebula's grasp. Dark Nebula runs off, but Kirby's kind of pissed at this point and is not about to let this thing go scot-free. Armed with the power of DeRoach's triple star, again don't ask questions, Kirby defeats Dark Nebula and heads home. The Squeaks depart to parts unknown, and even sends Kirby's strawberry shortcake back as an apology. The end. Alright, I have some critiques. I think the plot here is a good summation of Squeak Squad as a whole. It's kinda just there. The new characters are existent, and the Meta Knight subplot of him fixing up his airship was cute, but it's overall a very bog-standard adventure that doesn't leave that big of an impact on the greater lore of the franchise. And at the end, I'm left with a few questions that the game never really bothered answering. What was the triple star? I'm assuming DeRoach stole it from somewhere, I doubt that's his, but from where? Why did Meta Knight leave after level 7? He stole the chest because he knew Dark Nebula was inside, so why did he not bother helping out once it did get released? What, is he lazy? Who even was Dark Nebula? Is it Satan? Is it Dark Matter 3? Is it just some guy? Why was he locked in a chest? Why did the Squeaks steal Kirby's strawberry shortcake? How good was this cake for Kirby to go to the depths of space to get it back? Overall, the story, not bad. It's not great, but it's okay. Let's talk about something a bit more positive for a second, like the presentation. Graphically, this game is beautiful. All of the sprites are really well animated, the backgrounds and tilesets are similarly well made. This is as good as pixel art gets on the DS. There is just one small issue. I've been showing footage of Amazing Mirror. Yeah, majority of assets here are just reused from previous titles. Not just the artwork, even some of the music is reused. Many tilesets and backgrounds are also from other games, a lot of the enemies and even mini-bosses are from older titles. If this were any other franchise, we'd be calling it an asset flip. Is this a bad thing? In my personal opinion, no. Reusing assets is actually rad as hell. It lets developers focus on more important aspects of game design. And to be frank, these assets did not need to be redone. You've heard the proverb, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? It does piss off the gamers, like a lot, but gamers don't deserve to be happy. Plus, this is kind of just a trend among Kirby games in this area. Everything from Nightmare and Dreamland all the way to Mass Attack share assets. Squeak Squad is not unique here. If anything, I think I have to commend Squeak Squad for being the first Kirby game in existence to not acknowledge Wispy Woods. Don't fact check me on that statement, I do not care. That being said, this once again reinforces Squeak Squad's issue of identity. This game looks nice, but it's also playing it very safe considering what the DS was capable of. There are a lot of details I do like, such as the dance Kirby does at the end of each level, or the several unique idle animations for certain abilities, but I definitely wish Squeak Squad stood out a bit more, visually speaking. The Nintendo DS was known for its 3D capabilities, and I think it would have been neat to see that incorporated in this game. Would it have dated the game graphically? Yes, absolutely. But I personally love seeing janky 3D DS models. They have charm. Sonic Colors DS looks like dog shit, and I love it. Alright, so if Kirby Squeak Squad isn't using the DS's graphical power, then what is it using? The answer? That touchscreen, baby. Hell yeah, touching is good. This is Squeak Squad's most defining feature. It's not enough to really call it a gimmick, it doesn't directly alter how you play the game or anything, but it's not something any other game tried, so whatever. The bottom screen here depicts Kirby's stomach, pocket dimension, inventory. It's an inventory system. On occasion, you'll run into these bubbles, which contain things like copy abilities, food, mini Kirbys, etc. When you touch one, it gets added to the bottom screen. You can hold a total of 5 bubbles at a given time, and at any point, you can tap an item to use it. Tap on a food item to heal, tap on an ability to change into it, pretty self-explanatory. You can also drag a bubble to the top of the screen to get rid of it. The game doesn't tell you can do this. I'm assuming it's in the manual, but I don't have the manual. Why did games do this? One cool thing you can do with this system is mix bubbles together. You can mix 2 food items together to get something that heals for a bit more, or if you have 2 abilities you don't particularly want, you can mix them together and try to roll for a new one. And with these mini Kirbys, if you mix 3 of them together, you get an extra 1-up. Overall, this is a very simple but interesting enough inventory system. You might think 5 slots is a bit much, but trust me, you're never going to have all 5 slots filled with something useful. This is for 2 primary reasons. One is those mini Kirby bubbles. While it's true that getting 3 of them rewards a 1-up, the actual mini Kirbys do nothing on their own. They are dead weight, and if I'm honest, since this game also resets all your lives upon closing the game, I never really bother collecting these things. The second reason, the big one, is that 90% of the time, your inventory will be filled with the main collectible for this title, the treasure chests. The treasure chests are a collectible returning from Amazing Mirror, but since I never played Amazing Mirror, we're just gonna pretend that game doesn't exist for a second. In every level, there will be around 1 to 3 treasure chests to find and collect. You can get these by finding secret rooms, solving puzzles, completing challenges, or sometimes just by playing through the stage naturally. Usually, each level will also include a special large treasure chest near the level's exit. Upon grabbing this treasure chest, in come in the Squeaks to ruin your day. The Squeak enemies can make you drop a treasure box when hit, both the big one and the smaller ones. They are also usually accompanied by a mini-boss. We got Stolo, Spinny, and Doc. I don't think these names are ever stated in-game. You can't really beat them, and most of the time it's not really worth the effort. These sections often devolve into being a mad dash to the exit while trying to dodge everything that's thrown at you. During these sections, treasure chests can also be picked up by the Squeaks. If they grab one, then they'll take it into their den. You just need to hit them to get it back, but some of these guys can be pretty quick, and once they're in their den, those chests are gone. Except, no, they're not actually. It turns out you can enter these dens and fight the Squeaks to get your treasure chests back. If you're wondering why I'm making a big deal out of that fact, it's because it took me until literally the last stage of the last level of the game to realize you can do this. I am a little bitter if you can't tell. If you die in these sections while also dropping the chests though, then, well, too bad, they're gone, sucks to suck. Play the whole stage again to get them back. Also, we're not going to tell you what chests you drop, so you should probably check the locations of all of them just to be safe. This happened to me several times, and it was very tedious to go back into the level just to grab the 2 boxes I missed. You will probably need to replay some levels anyways, because sometimes the treasure chests are located in a split pathway, and if you choose the wrong path, well. But what do you get out of collecting these chests? Are they just arbitrary collectibles placed for the sake of having collectibles? No. Oh no, they are not, my friend. In fact, you're going to want to collect all of these, because the rewards locked away behind these chests are actually really fucking good. The rewards vary pretty wildly. Some let you customize the design of your bottom screen or change Kirby's color palette, some unlock new music in the sound tests, some are just pieces of an image in the gallery, you know, all pretty superfluous stuff. But then you have rewards like the extra levels to play through, copy ability scrolls, parts of a medallion which eventually unlocks a new ability, permanent health increases, the ability room, things that are generally very nice. And you know, you could just blitz through the game ignoring all of this, but honestly, it is kind of addicting to see what you unlock, and slowly see your bottom screen fill out with new options, new stuff to stare at. In a way, I feel more incentivized to 100% compared to other Kirby games, because what you get is more substantial. There is a small issue I have with the treasure chests, and that is the fact that I lied. They aren't truly optional. There are a few treasure chests which contain something called star seals, which at first don't seem to do anything, but their description reads, collect all of them for a surprise? And let me tell you, on a blind playthrough, that description is interesting. It's such a vague phrase, and the question mark at the end of the sentence implies something slightly ominous. It made me want to grab all of the star seals just to see what would happen. It turns out, they're just keys to unlock the door to level 7. That's it, they're progression. Not even clever progression, this feels arbitrary as hell. And from what I've played, there doesn't seem to be much of a pattern to where the star seals are in each area, aside from being usually in stage 1 or 2 of each world. Sometimes it's in the small chest, sometimes it's in the big one, so you might as well just grab all the chests just to make sure you aren't missing any by the time you get here. I don't like this, obviously. I don't think the star seals were a necessary inclusion, especially since I already feel inclined to grab the chests. At most, this feels like padding, forcing some players to go back and replay levels until they get the seals to finish the game. The level it unlocks isn't even the last world, it's the second to last one. Why are these placed here? Speaking of levels, how are they anyways? The series is a platformer first and foremost, so it's gotta be pretty spectacular, right? Good enough to warrant replaying them? This is gonna be the hottest take of the video, alright? Sit yourself down and listen closely. I think Kirby's platforming and level design is its weakest aspect. Look, you already booed me once, alright? Doing it again does nothing. When I say weakest, that doesn't mean bad. I think the level design for Kirby, on the whole, is serviceable. It's just, well, the least interesting thing going on. I think Kirby's real strength has always been in its boss fights. Okay, maybe not always, but there's a reason these games usually include a boss rush mode. The most enjoyment I get out of a Kirby game is fighting bosses, trying out different abilities and strategies against them. But for the actual levels, the real meat of the game, they don't really have the same impact for me. From the 3 Kirby titles I've extensively played, I feel like the games reuse certain design tropes a lot. Oh, here's the wheel section that every game is required to have. Here's the hit 2 switches but ignore the 3rd to get the rewards section. Here's the invincibility candy section. Here's the Donkey Kong Country section. All that's missing from this title is the Kirby's Dream Land recreation. Level themes are fairly generic and sometimes irrelevant. Here's a factory in the middle of a jungle. Why is it here? Doesn't matter, have fun. No theme stands out that much besides level 6. It starts out as a fairly generic water world before gradually shifting towards being inside the halberd. And it's a lot cooler because the halberd is already an established location in this universe. Squeaks has a few levels that are incredibly short, like 1 to 2 screens short. While I would have preferred these levels to be labeled differently from the normal ones, I do really like this approach. These levels tend to be smaller bite-sized challenge sequences. One of my favorite levels is just a mad dash to the exit using the wheel ability. This isn't the only time the game uses this level trope, but because this one isn't stable to another level, this instance stands out a lot to me. One thing I really do like, that's not unique to this game in the slightest, is how many copy abilities can directly affect the levels. You have the obvious interactions: fire burns grass, sword and cutter can slash through grass and rope, ice can freeze water surfaces, etc. But there are some unique interactions I didn't expect. If you have plasma while in any metallic area, using the ability electrifies the ground and creates currents that damage enemies. Beam gets a similar interaction too. You can also stand on these gray clouds and use plasma to gain a larger radius on your attack. Wheel Kirby can drive over fire, snow, or electricity to gain its properties, meaning you can drive over water by freezing it. This is like the only area in the game you can do this in, and it's really damn cool. Tornado can also do this, but it pretty much never comes up. Firesword Kirby can break through clouds and completely destroy the level design. And of course we have Animal Kirby, whose whole gimmick is being able to dig through dirt tiles in certain levels. It's pretty useless outside of those instances, but it's kinda cool. And yes, you heard me correctly earlier when I said Fire Sword Kirby. I mentioned before that you can mix 2 ability bubbles together to make a new one. For 95% of combinations, it'll just spit out a random ability. But there are a few combinations that instead create a mix ability. This mechanic is surprisingly underwhelming. Your options for mix abilities are elemental swords, elemental bombs. That's it. Your selection is incredibly limited, and the changes are minuscule. They feel the exact same to use. Their move lists are identical. They might be stronger, I think. I really couldn't tell. Some of them do affect the environment, but that's not a unique feature to them. At most, these mix abilities feel like cosmetic changes. There's nothing wrong with that approach. I love the look of Plasma Sword Kirby, for instance, but it definitely feels like a mechanic they added last minute because, well, why not? But so what if the mix ability mechanic is underwhelming? Who even needs that when you can simply make your own abilities better on the whole? I glossed over these ability scrolls earlier, one of the collectibles you can get from the chests. What do they do, you wonder? Allow me to enlighten you. When collected, an ability scroll will upgrade the corresponding ability and make it stronger, either in a literal sense increasing damage, or by unlocking new attacks and actions to perform. This mechanic is surprisingly underwhelming. God damn it, Squeak Squad. Alright, let me say first of all, I love this idea in concept. Clearly Hal did too, considering Forgotten Land brought this idea back somewhat. It gives the player further incentive to switch between abilities to see what's changed, what's added, and in the right circumstances, it can breathe new life into an ability. A prime example is Sleep Kirby. What starts off as merely a joke power-up can be upgraded into an ability which heals Kirby for a bit, giving it a genuine niche use case. 2 issues. Number 1, the ability scroll usually only adds one new thing. I'm guessing because these items are optional, Hal didn't want them to be too integral. As such, a lot of the time, these ability scrolls don't feel that impactful. Oh boy, I just unlocked the Fire ability scroll. What cool thing does Fire Kirby get to do now? You can aim the fire breath up or down now. Hell yeah! Number 2, when I said that some ability scrolls just makes the ability stronger, that's pretty much half of them. Beam Kirby gets a stronger beam, Cutter Kirby gets a bigger boomerang, Laser Kirby gets a stronger laser, Sword Kirby and Bomb Kirby don't even get any changes, instead just unlock the mix abilities, which again, are functionally just cosmetic changes. And ordinarily, I wouldn't care that much about this. The scrolls are optional anyways, it's supposed to be more of a nice bonus instead of an integral game mechanic. Except that some of them do get pretty cool additions. Animal Kirby gets a new aerial attack that helps with mobility, Magician Kirby unlocks gambling, Plasma Kirby gets its main mechanic from Superstar back, turning it from one of the most mid power-ups into one of the GOATs. It feels lopsided. Biased, almost. Why can't Beam Kirby get its aerial attack? Or at least the charge attack? Why can't Laser be a good ability? Speaking on the abilities in a general sense, they are also a bit lopsided. Some abilities like Beam, Cutter, Tornado, Throw, High Jump, etc. are incredibly simple, with only one attack or action they can perform. But then you got Ninja, Plasma, Fighter, Hammer, all of which have multiple actions available. I think it's fine for some abilities to be on the simpler side. Like, Wheel has been practically unchanged since its debut, and that works, everyone loves Wheel. I also think it works in this game specifically because of the bottom screen, which lets you switch abilities on the fly when you get bored of your current one. But when given the choice of abilities to play as, I'll be honest, Ninja is simply way more fun to control. This next part is only tangentially related, but I don't know where else to bring it up, so here we go. In this game, you lose your ability immediately upon being hit. I hate this so much. It is so annoying to have to run back and grab your ability every single time you take even a small point of damage. You know, maybe it's a smart decision. It forces the player to play a bit more cautiously. I had to learn some boss attack patterns for once. That's cool. I still hate it. I gotta say though, whoever programmed Tornado in this game, great work. I don't know why, but in this game only, I actually feel like I can control Tornado reliably well. And it turns out that when you make Tornado controllable, it's actually kind of broken. It's what I use for a lot of the boss fights. How about those new abilities though? Squeak Squad introduced 5 new abilities, as well as revamping a pre-existing ability: Animal, Metal, Bubble, Ghost, and Triple Star, with an honorable mention to Magician. Animal Kirby's main feature, as I mentioned before, is the ability to dig. Unfortunately, you can't burrow through any terrain, it has to be these specific dirt tiles. Outside of that, it's got some pretty terrible range, isn't particularly strong, and its main gimmick was stolen to make room for Drill. At least it looks cute. Metal Kirby does this. This is a contender for the worst ability in the franchise. Bubble Kirby only has 2 attacks, but also has the ability to turn enemies into bubbles, allowing you to save them for later. Bubble Kirby, also importantly, has a really nice hat. Just look at it. It's a soap dish with a bunch of bubbles. This is so much better than the weird water cylinder for Water Kirby. We used to be a proper country. Magician Kirby existed in Amazing Mirror as a simple roulette button. In this game, that option still exists, but it's also got actual attacks now. It's got some fun flavor as well, pulling dubs out of a hat, throwing playing cards at your enemies, and there's even a creepy-ass clown. What's not to love? This one's probably my favorite of the new ones, even if it's technically not new. Ghost Kirby is a weird one. You don't get this ability until you collect enough pieces to form the Ghost Medallion, at which point these ghost mini-bosses will start showing up. You don't get the last piece of the medallion until the final level, so you don't get a lot of time to experiment with it. Ghost allows Kirby to possess enemies and control them, using their attacks and assets to your advantage. You see the problem, right? This ability is outclassed by Kirby's fundamental capability to copy abilities. Oh neat, I can possess a fire enemy to use its fire attack, or I could just eat him and do a way better job. Ghost Kirby is a novelty. I don't think it was ever intended to be a serious power-up you're going to use regularly. I think the unlock method is more interesting than the ability itself. I don't hate it, and with some minor reworks, it could be interesting. As is, though. I mean, the sprite's kinda cool. Finally, there's Triple Star, which only shows up for the final boss stage, but after beating the game, you can actually go to the ability room and grab it to bring it into any level. That's a fun little bonus. Unfortunately, it's also kinda lame. You get a projectile attack, that's it. Wow, guys, great work, you made Cutter too. I wouldn't say any of these abilities are outstanding, but I like them well enough, and I am excited to see how later entries will iterate on them. All of these abilities have never been seen again. Damn. I don't even know why, most of these aren't even bad ideas. Well, okay, we can do without Metal or Ghost, and Bubble Kirby I guess is tied to the bubble system, so it won't really work without that. But Animal Kirby? Magician? Really? These ones gotta go, but we gotta bring back Parasol for the 18th time? Really? I hate Parasol so much, by the way. Why is it everywhere? Is it nepotism? Is it because one guy on the dev team really loves Parasol and refuses to work without it? I need answers. Wow, I had a lot to say about the abilities in this game, huh? Well, it is Kirby's defining mechanic, so yeah, that makes sense. Anyways, while you aren't looking, I 100%ed the game. Kirby Squeak Squad is not terribly long. It took me roughly 4 hours to finish it, and that's with me going out of the way to grab every treasure chest. You could beat this game in an afternoon if you're dedicated enough. Upon beating the game, you will unlock 2 new options, Extra Mode and Boss Endurance. Extra Mode is surprisingly underwhelming. Squeak Squad, why are you like this? Look, it's just a new game plus option with a timer stapled on. The goal in this mode is to collect all the treasure chests as fast as possible. You have access to all of the levels to start out, and the timer only goes during stages. Overall, it's a fine side mode, but Nightmare in Dreamland had Meta Nightmare where you could play as Meta Knight, so I feel like we could have done a bit more. The game isn't any harder either, which is usually the bare minimum of what these modes do. The Boss Endurance is this game's equivalent to the arena in the modern games, and this mode is, say it with me now, surprisingly underwhelming. Yep, it's a boss rush. What were you expecting? It wouldn't be until Superstar Ultra where we got arenas with exclusive boss fights and exceedingly strange lore drops. So for this boss rush, it's just do it for fun. You don't even get a timer in this mode. You get a congratulations, now go do something else. I haven't really taken a chance to talk about the bosses in this game. Wanna guess what I'm gonna say next? Alright, to be fair, some of them did kick my ass a bit. The Meta Knight fight was genuinely pretty difficult until I cheated. Krako, for some reason, is the only boss to have a phase 2. He's fought in the middle of the game, and he's not even the real Krako. I genuinely really liked Orochi's 2 fights. Everything else? Meh. Dark Nebula is such an underwhelming final boss. He doesn't even get a proper phase 2. Again, Krako did. And why do half of these bosses get completely demolished by Tornado? How is this allowed? Nearly every Kirby game released comes with its own collection of sub-games, little mini-games to play as a break from the main story. Squeak Squad is no different, and for this entry, they like to remind you that the DS has a touchscreen. We got Speedy Tea Time. Tap the bottom screen when you see cake, don't when you see bomb. Next is Smash Ride, the hit sequel to Kirby Air Ride. Slide Kirby around this arena and try to knock off your opponents. This one's my favorite because it's also in Smash 3DS. Finally, there's Treasure Shot. Flick the stylus toward the chest, aim for the sweets, and earn points. I didn't understand this one at first and actually lost a few times. This one's the worst, 0 out of 10. Are any of these sub-games fun? It's the only form of multiplayer in this game, at least that's something. They're a nice distraction, but that's about it. You can go the whole game without even touching these sub-games. They're ranking near the bottom of my Kirby sub-games tier list. You will never beat Bomb Rally. There's also the end of level minigame. Spin around inside this cannon and time your button press to get some extra healing. Maybe a 1-up too. This end minigame is also bottom tier. It's almost never 1-ups, just healing. That's lame. Alright, what's next? Oh, I think that's it. Alright, who's ready to talk about the sound test for 5 minutes? No? Okay. I'll admit, I haven't been the most charitable when discussing this game. I've compared Squeak Squad to other Kirby games at several points in this video, and some of those comparisons were with games released after this one. And that's not really fair, I'm aware. I should be able to discuss this game without needing to bring up other titles. But see, that's the thing. I kind of have to do that in order to illustrate my points. Because in a vacuum, without any other game to discuss, Kirby Squeak Squad is a great game. It's one of the best platformers you can get on the DS. I 100% of this game, not only because it was honestly really easy to do so, but because I also had fun doing it. The game controls great, the gameplay, while nothing special, is engaging, the difficulty never becomes unfair or annoying, even if I do hate how it handles losing your ability, but whatever. The visuals and soundtrack are superb. This is a good video game right here. But Squeak Squad does not exist in a vacuum. It's unfortunately part of a franchise that's very consistent quality-wise. And once you start seeing the bigger picture, it's easy to see where this game falls short. The plot, forgettable. The level design and bosses, serviceable. The abilities, I miss them. This is the epitome of the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. And this is coming from somebody who's only played like 3 of these games. I imagine for a dedicated fan, these problems are only more apparent. The comparison to the new Super Mario Bros. Series is very appropriate. Squeak Squad's only crime is being generic. It doesn't truly excel in any area. And sometimes that's worse than being outright bad. Nobody talks about Squeak Squad because there isn't a lot to talk about. But I want to make it clear that there's nothing inherently wrong with being generic. Ironically, I think this game being so rudimentary is what I like about it. Sometimes I just want to play something basic. Not every game needs to innovate, not every game needs to be a genre-redefining masterpiece. Some games can just be fun, and that's enough for me. Kirby Squeak Squad is comfort food, and I for one love milquetoast. Do you need to play this game? Not really, but if you already played through Superstar Ultra on the system and want to play something new, maybe try the spin-offs first. But if you've done that as well, then yeah, sure, give it a go. And that's everything I wanted to say about Kirby Squeak Squad. Well, almost everything. I do need to let you know that on multiple occasions while writing the script, instead of reading Squeak Squad, my mind read Silk Song. It's been 5 years.